Welcome to LWDG Pod Dog, the podcast that helps women train their gun dogs and become part of a supportive community. I'm Joanne Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group, and I'm thrilled to be your host. Our online membership offers expert training, monthly courses, and live coaching sessions that empower women to become confident and skilled gun dog handlers. Join us as we share insights, advice, and stories to help you and your four-legged friend achieve your goals. So, grab your headphones, sit back, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of LWDG Pod Dog. Joining me this week is the amazing Simon Grace, professional gun dog trainer and field trial competitor, and our lovely Sue Lister from Field and Fireside. This week we're going to be talking all about Gun Dogs Unleashed with Simon Grace. Hi Simon, how are you?
I'm all right, Joe. How are you?
I'm really looking forward to our conversation with both you and Sue about your history, your background, all the things that you've been up to.
Yeah.
Before we start, Simon, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved with gun dogs and gun dog trialing?
How long have you got? Well, I got my first dog probably, which was a Springer. At about 20-year-old. I always wanted a dog when I lived at home with my mum and dad. I was never allowed to have one. Probably didn't trust me because we had a couple of pets that probably went by the wayside and I was to blame. But anyway, that's the way it is. So I got my first Springer when I was about 20. I used to be a ghillie up in Scotland on the River Tay, like a guide. And while I was up there, I did a bit of part-time gamekeeping, beating, picking up with my dogs, spaniels that I had, because I had one or two by then. And really, ever since then, I've just been involved in all sorts of field sports, from fishing to obviously my dogs. I do a lot of deer stalking. I go up to Scotland probably 5 or 6 times a year, either fishing, stalking, or doing something to do with the dogs. I pick up on a couple of local grouse moors and a pheasant shoot. So yeah, I'm just that's what I do. I'm busy kind of all year round, really. If it's not doing one thing, it's doing another. So yeah, busy.
So what inspired you to transform your love of dogs into a full-time profession? Now, you just mentioned you're meant to be retired.
Yeah.
But obviously you're doing quite a lot and you're really passionate about the dogs. So what took you from your background to this?
As I say, I've always been involved. My first love, and I don't want to say I've got a favourite when it comes to dogs, but my first love are spaniels, Springer Spaniels. I've always had Springers. I've had some, reasonably good success with them in trials. And I always kind of did that as a hobby when I was working full time. I was a telephone engineer for 29 years, and before that I was a plumber. But I always had dogs, and I always, were involved with either some shoot or another. And then the gradual progression kind of took me towards trialing. When I'd finished at Openreach, who I worked for, I kind of decided that I was going to do a little bit more with the dogs, because I'd done one-to-ones, and Sue, who sat next to me here, I used to do like summer classes on an evening and a weekend, and that's how I met Sue, actually. And that was something that I just kind of started off, and we were all right. We had some good times, a little bit of fun along the way with people's different dogs and everything else. And then I was going to carry on with that, and then COVID came along, of course, and kind of spoilt it all. And I never really kind of took it up again, that. But from then, Sue had maybe passed names on to me, other people, and then I decided that I was going to do maybe take 1 or 2 dogs in for training, and pass the word out to a couple of other people that I know in Gundog world, some other pro trainers, and I get quite a little bit of work off them, doing one-to-ones, people ringing them up. They maybe haven't got time and they kind of pass them on to me, and that's what I'm doing now. So mainly kind of one-to-ones, just Q&A type things, and I've got, as I say, I've got 3 labs at home that at the moment that are in for training, plus my own, plus a litter of pups, plus 2 Springer Spaniels, and so yeah, I've got my hands full. Yeah. Yeah.
So that that you went from like working with gun dogs for yourself, enjoying them for yourself.
Yeah.
Was there sort of a significant experience or a person or people who influenced your career path going into like trialing?
Yeah, absolutely. When I used to go up to where I am in Yorkshire, we're very lucky around here to have some absolutely fantastic shooting estates, and within 20 minutes drive we've got some of the absolute UK's best upland and lowland driven game shoots. One of them being Bolton Abbey, which is a very, very famous grouse moor, owned by the Duchess and Duke of Devonshire. One of the keepers up there, who's just sadly died a couple of months ago, a guy called Mick Rock, he did a lot of trialing, and I met Mick up at Bolton Abbey. He always kind of took an interest in my spaniels, because I've always tried to maintain a good standard of training for my dogs. I'm one of these that I don't take my dog out into the field until it's absolutely 100% ready. Because I've always believed that a lot of mistakes that a dog can make, you can't put them right in the shooting field. It's not the time or the place to do it. So Mick kind of took me under his wing a little bit and gave me a lot of advice. Mick obviously did a lot of trialing. He won the championships back in British Championships back in I think it might have been 1987, with a bitch called Simon Seat Slip, that went on to produce, that was a bitch obviously, went on to produce some other top trialing dogs. And it was Mick that really got me involved and just give me that kind of taste for competition, and obviously to just progress and just push your dogs that little bit more to get the best out of them, so yeah. So
this gentleman Mick introduced you to the sport, was incredibly good at the sport. For anybody listening who doesn't know anything about trials, can you give us just a brief overview of what a gun dog trial involves?
Yeah, well, a lot of people seem to get confused between a field trial and a test, and they're 2 completely different things. A test is run using artificial game, either dummies or cold game or whatever. A trial is a proper walked up shoot. So for example, let's say it's a rabbit trial. You get a lot in Yorkshire, although rabbits aren't as prevalent as what they used to be, but they still do have a lot of rabbit trials in Yorkshire. So there'll be 2 handlers. So say me with my spaniel, somebody on my right hand side with another spaniel, or left hand side, depending on which way you start. Each handler has a judge behind him, and you've got a gun to your left and a gun to your right and a couple of guns in the middle. So you might be covering a space of around 30-40 yards. So you've got 2 handlers, 2 judges, 2 guns on inside and 2 guns on outside. And basically your dog is looking for game. The judge is looking for hunting ability, looking for steadiness to game. I mean, there's a whole a multitude of things that can go wrong in field trials. Your dog's running in, your dog's pegging game, which is obviously picking something up that's not being shot and bringing it back to hand. So it's got to be steady when it actually flushes game. It can't go and retrieve that item of game until you send it to go retrieve it, and your judge will tell you when to send your dog. So that if your dog flushes a pheasant or a rabbit and it gets shot, you're there. Your dog's obviously marked it, or hopefully marked it. Your judge will say, send your dog. You send your dog brings it back. You obviously delivers it as nicely as possible to hand. You turn, give your item of game to the judge, and then you either carry on. Once your judge has seen enough of your dog, its hunting ability, the way that it handles, you know, there's as I say, there's a few things that your judge is looking at. Once he's seen everything and he's happy with what he's seen, then you've kind of finished, and then you move. So you'll go, and then another handler will come in behind you, and it just carries on like that. So it is. There's two different types of trials. There's your novice trial and then your open trial, and they're doing what they call an all-aged as well. But basically, it's your novice trial is the one that you try to get through and win, and then when you've won a novice, then you get through to your opens. Then your opens, if you win an open, then you qualify for championships. So it's a big thing. Although I say it's a big thing, it's when you go to these trials, you often find that you see the same people. So it's a small nucleus of people that are involved in trialing, but it's very competitive. There's a lot of let's say a lot of politics. There's a lot of big handlers that seem to do very well a lot of the time, and I've had quite a lot of luck over the years, you know, with some good dogs, and yeah, you know, it's one of them things that you've got to. If somebody's thinking about getting into trialing, think about it very, very carefully, because it's going to cost you an awful lot of money. It's going to cost you, and if you want your dogs to be good and be with a chance of winning, it's going to cost you an awful lot of time, a lot of mileage, going here, there, and everywhere, either shooting or trialing. It's a big thing, and it takes it's quite a selfish sport, because you tend to spend a lot of time away from home. But yeah, once you get into it, it's great. It is good. Yeah.
Share with our listeners some of your most memorable gun dog trial, and why was it the most memorable?
Right, most memorable. I've had a few. Well, the most memorables are the ones that I've won. But saying that, I used to have a little black and white bitch called Megan, bred from a field trial champion called Wenmouth Breck. It was a Welsh guy called Gareth Williams that bred her out of his own bitch, called Gwenna Jest, actually, sorry, sired by Wenmouth Breck. And I'm going back to old breeding here. A lot of these dogs now that I'm talking about might be on your 4th or 5th generation if you look at a 5-generation pedigree. And that little thing probably stood 10-inch to shoulder, absolute machine. Tough as old boots, would go through anything from brambles, flat bracken, rushes. She was the creme de la creme of spaniels, and she to a lot of my friends, she was the field trial champion that never was, simply because I was running in an open qualifier for the championships with a Pembrokeshire Gundog Club down at Bilthwells down in South Wales, which you probably know, Joe. I've gathered that you're Welsh with your accent, but anyway.
Yeah. Not far from me.
Yeah. Well, I gathered that one about your game fair, but anyway, they are down at Bilthwells, and there were a runoff. When a runoff is when the judges just can't make a decision as to who's going to come first, second, or third. So what they'll do is they'll bring the 3 dogs in, and one dog will run off against another, and they'll look at the hunting, and they're just looking for the real fine points. And I ended up getting having a runoff with a bitch called Phillips Girl, handled by a guy called Norman Blakeney from Northern Ireland. And the runoff was for first place, and unfortunately I kind of got picked at the post and I got second. That dog that won went on to win the championships that year, and it was a memorable trial because, you know, when you just have to pull everything out of the bag, and she did it, you know. That bitch, and I've had other ones, you know, in past dogs and bitches that have been memorable, but that sometimes when you look back at the kind of successes. I mean, I've never had major success. I've never kind of obviously been placed in the champion. I've never even qualified for championships, not through lack of trying. But I've done all right in novices, and I've had plenty of awards in opens. But you sometimes look back at your dogs, and the difficult part of trialing is always trying to find a dog that were better than your last one, and that's so difficult. And trying to find the qualities in a dog that your last one had, that you had all the successes with, and it doesn't happen often. And you look back at, like, you know, with Megan that I ran in that trial. She was just a tremendous dog. I ended up retiring her off to a gamekeeper friend of mine over in Lancashire, and he was a good handler, the guy that I give him to. And even he, after all the spaniels, a proper old type spaniel man, and even he said that it was probably the best spaniel that he'd ever had. And she just did everything. Never put a foot wrong. Never put a foot wrong. You knew that if you went to a trial, you were always going to be knocking on the door. You know, we're one of them. Some dogs, you go to trials and you think, well, if she does everything right, I'm in with a chance. If she does something wrong, I'm going to be put out. But chances are she's going to be put out because she's going to do something wrong. With that bitch, that was never the case. You always knew that she was going to pull it out, pull it out of the bag for you and come up with that little bit of magic. And unfortunately, we never made it to top. But yeah, a real nice dog.
I suppose, like you said, it's such a small group of people.
Yeah.
Running such incredible dogs.
Yeah.
It really is like, it's literally the Formula One of Gundogs.
Absolutely, especially in spaniels as well. Obviously, it's a spaniel is a different animal to a Labrador, and obviously it depends what turns you on. It depends what turns you on when it comes to Gundogs. I mean, for me, much as I love Labradors and I love to see him going back on 400-500 yard retrieves and over fences and over walls, and you might be on a grouse moor and one at Guns will say there's a grouse that's dropped back way behind line, and you send your dog back and it picks it. That's brilliant, it is. But to get a real quality, hard hunting spaniel that'll hunt in front of you, to find something for you to shoot, to me, that's just a creme de la creme. There's nothing better, nothing better than a real proper hard hunting spaniel. And you don't get that many hard hunting spaniels. You get some nice hunting spaniels, but I like something that tears through cover and does what a spaniel's supposed to do.
We were just talking earlier, actually, before you joined us, Simon, about, obviously field sports are under attack from all sorts of angles at the minute, and it's a sort of scary thought, but there's a possibility that field sports will no longer exist in the future. What do you think, if that were the case, would be the result on, you've mentioned, careful breeding and bloodlines, working lines. Do you think that would mean that the Gundog and trialing world would become, say, more diluted, or because they don't have an everyday job to do, or do you think actually that would put the focus more on trialing because that's all they'd have to do?
Well, if these people that want to stop, i.e. shooting or field sports, trialing just won't happen. It'll just stop. There are those people out there, I won't mention any names, but that want to see it all gone tomorrow. I run a Facebook group called, well, I say I run it, me and some other admin members run a Facebook group called Action Against Antis. And it all kind of started when grouse shooting were banned on Ilkley Moor back in 2018. A group called Banned Blood Sports on Yorkshire's Moors started doing campaigns at various places, and I started this little group of people up just to basically go and stand next to them and dispel the myth that shooting, driven game shooting, driven grouse shooting were a bad thing, and it's not. It's not a bad thing at all. In fact, it's a good thing for and beneficial for our uplands. I mean, the uplands, and I'm looking at them now as I'm looking at ourselves window, our nearest moor to it is Bingley Moor, and the uplands are a very important part of the British countryside, as in wildlife diversity, and everything that you see on a grouse moor doesn't happen by accident. It's there because it's managed, and it's managed obviously to produce grouse for shooting, but alongside of that there are other birds, your red-listed waders and insects and animals that benefit by that. If all that goes, if grouse shooting goes, then pheasant shooting goes. If pheasant shooting goes, we've lost it all. Only because a lot of these estates, like Bolton Abbey, other ones in surrounding areas, you know, up here, but from the length and breadth of Britain, rely on an income, and people that work on these estates rely on that estate for a job, for raising the families, and without the shooting, it'll just all go. So talking about what will happen, will it be more diluted? Will field trialling be less, I don't know, maybe less competitive? Well, it isn't even worth talking about, because if it goes, the lot's gone. We won't be field trialling. The only thing we will be doing, if anything, is running tests. And I don't want to be involved in a Gundog world where all I can do is run dogs in tests, although I have done it past and they're very enjoyable. They are, you know, and I've had success in tests, and it's great, but that ain't what it's about. It's about bringing out your dog's natural abilities, and a dog's natural ability isn't to find a 2-pound dummy in the middle of a field. Its natural ability is to find game, and if it goes, then, as I say, our dogs won't have that opportunity to do that. Sadly, it absolutely breaks my heart to think that could happen. There are a lot of people that believe it won't happen, a lot of people that aren't even bothered, or don't seem to bother whether it'll happen or not. But when it does happen, then they will hit the fan big time, because then it'd be all like, well, you know, we didn't see that coming. Well, you did see it coming. I've been talking about it for the last 5 to 8 years about field sports being banned. Now, when I say field sports, I'm not talking fishing or deer stalking necessarily. Really, I'm talking about shooting as a sport. A lot of people think it doesn't have a place in modern society now, but it absolutely does, especially when we're talking about putting wild game on table, eating the right sort of food. So it absolutely has got a place in modern society, and we need, as a field sports community, to keep this thing going. And 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been having this conversation, 10 or 15 years ago. And it's only because of the likes of LACS, well, League Against Cruel Sports, Banned Blood Sports on Yorkshire's Moors, Wild Justice, Wild Moors, all these up PETA, all these animal rights organisations, they've got such a foothold now that they've got some real poke, and I don't like what's happening, and these people are trying to stop us from doing what we're doing. We're branded as murderers, as psychopaths, you know, or not. Hey, listen, Joe, I've got 5 shotguns and 3 rifles at home in my shotgun cabinet. If I were a psychopath, I don't think West Yorkshire Police would be happy about me having that, you know. that sort of hardware in my house now. We're branded as all these, with all these names, but yet we are, and the keepers, the people that are involved in fields in shooting, the keepers, the estate managers, we are involved in keeping the countryside, managing it. So, and as I say, it don't look like it does by accident. When people go on these winter walks and they see a big beautiful cock pheasant on a fence, and look at, that ain't there because it's by accident. It's there because there's a shoot somewhere in that area. When you see a pack of grouse flying across a moor at 70 miles an hour, it's there because it's managed, and it's managed for shooting. You can tell I'm passionate about this, and it makes me blood boil when people want to stop me from doing what I want to do, and I do not get why there are people that just want us to spoil it for us, and it's awful. It's awful, and I don't have sleepless nights about it, but I've got a lot of concerns about it.
Well, we hopefully are seeing some balance, like this in the Telegraph in May. The vets have put in a letter about how the hunting bans in 2004 has had a catastrophic effect on foxes. Whereas fox hunting was almost regulating a life cycle within the countryside, it is now a free-for-all. Healthy foxes are being killed. Foxes are being killed in massive numbers. We're seeing huge declines in some in some county boroughs. We are seeing near enough extinction of foxes, which hopefully this new concept coming forward is, look, we have to bring balance to the argument, don't we? We can't have just a one side.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But it's getting the right people to listen to our argument. I mean, look at what Welsh government are trying to do with releasing pheasants now. I mean, there's no two ways about it. The Welsh government want pheasant shooting banned, and they're trying to find every little which way that they can to do it. Now, releasing birds on SSL, on sites of special scientific interest land, all that, just taking it apart piece by piece, brick by brick. Luckily, we've got some good shooting organisations, Basque and National Gamekeepers organisation working behind the scenes to try and keep things going. But the threat's there, Joe. And I know what you're saying about but the threat is there, and it's always going to be there. It's going to be one of them things where we can never drop our guard now. 25, 30 years ago, we could go out and shoot and enjoy ourselves and have a really good day out with our friends. Now we go out, we've got to look over our shoulder, make sure a bus ain't going to turn up with 30 antis on it that's going to come and spoil our day. And that's a sad state of affairs. And I was hoping, that looking back maybe 10 years ago, you kind of hope that we'd never get to this stage, but we have. And it is what it is. We've got to knuckle down, protect, promote and defence field sports individually, as well as supporting our shooting organisations, not them supporting us. We've got to support them as well. It's a two-way thing. When you become a member of Basque, you're not just joining a club, you're joining an organisation that relies on you as much as you're relying on them. And a lot of people don't realise that, but it is a two-way thing.
And Sue's question, I think, is absolutely right in the fact that if you've got dogs and you're not part of shooting or part of trialing, the reality is the dog in front of you is still a product of that environment, and without that environment, we lose the quality of dog in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You're right. I mean, let's go back to any kind of breed of gun dog. Let's talk about Labradors, for example. When a dog's made up to a field trial champion, it's made up to a field trial champion for a reason. It's because it's got all the natural abilities that a true gun dog should have. Now, obviously, when you look at Labradors, there's dogs that are bred for show, some dogs that are bred for working and show, but I'm talking about true working dogs here. So you've got a dog there that's proven itself in the field, that it can retrieve game undamaged, it can find game without chasing it, but basically it's got a nose, it's got a brain, and it's got a mouth that will retrieve game back undamaged. Now, if that stops, then there's nobody there to decide what dogs are good and what dogs are bad. So then you're going to get a bit of an awkward situation then, aren't you? Because you're going to get Bob's dog, mixed bitch, litter of pups. Nobody knows what it's like. Are you going to still have its hips and elbows tested? Are you still going to have its eyes tested? Are you going to have, people at the moment, as I say, we're trialing, when you've got a dog and you're using a stud dog, it's got all the health certificates, it's been fully health tested. That's because people want to maintain a standard. If you can't maintain that standard, then you might as well just forget it. And that standard is maintained through field trials, and what I'm talking about, working dogs here, not show dogs. That standard is maintained purely and simply through field trials. So if you're going to choose a dog for your bitch to have a litter of pups, if it's got FTCH at front of it, field trial champion, field trial winner, that dog has achieved a certain standard in the field. So you can safely use that dog knowing that them qualities that dog has is going to be, transferred hopefully somewhere along the line genetically between that dog and your bitch, and come out with a pup that's going to be obviously something nice that you can use as a shooting dog. That's what it's all about. So if field trials go, as I say, the whole thing kind of goes.
So talking about qualities, what qualities do you believe make a great gun dog, and how do you foster them in the dogs you train?
For me, I mean, again, Spaniels, Labradors, although the different types of dog for a different type of job, they still all have to have the same qualities. For me, docility, something that you've always got, a dog that wants to learn. I've got this black Labrador at home now that's just had a litter of pups. I can look in that dog's eyes and I can see real trust in that dog. And that dog, I get quite emotional about all this sort of stuff. That dog absolutely trusts me 100%. I trust that dog 100%, and we've got a real bond. And to have any form of success, not necessarily in competition, but just to train a dog. If you want to successfully train a dog, you've got to have that trust and that bond in a dog. And I kind of spoke to you briefly about the other day on that interview that we did for the Gundog Journal, that if you've got a dog that don't do it for you for whatever reason, and you try to persevere, you'll never get 100% from that dog, only because you're not going to give it 100%. I've had Spaniels, let's go back to Spaniels. So let's say you've got, as I have in the past, I've got 12 Spaniels in my kennels at home. Some dogs I absolutely cannot wait to get out of that kennel, to get them out and do some training with them, because they just fill your heart with joy. When you get them out, they're great to be around, they're easy, you love training them, they go from A to B, from B to C, brilliant. I've had other dogs where I thought, God, this thing is sending me out twist. Now, some dogs that are like that, you gain success. It makes it a little bit more special because you've overcome those barriers. But some dogs, you just don't hit it off at all. And if you don't hit it off, what's point in trying to continue? You just better moving on and getting another dog and hopefully trying next time to have better success. But I always look for a dog that wants to be around me, not one that as soon as I open boot a car, it just runs off and you don't see it again for half an hour. I want a dog, when it gets out back in the car, it's jumping up at me, wants to be with me, wants to see what's in back of my coat when I put my hand in my pocket, wants to see what I'm going to pull out when I put my whistle on. It's thinking, hey, up, we're off here, that sort of thing. I want a dog that's a mate, that's a friend, and you do get them, you know, I'm not saying they're few and far between, but they're not all like that. So yeah, there are certain qualities that I like to see in a dog. I'm not necessarily saying that if it hasn't got those qualities, you can't do anything with it. Of course you can, but you're always going to produce the best stuff out of a dog that you really like, and that is, it's that simple. I always kind of think, and I used to mention it a lot when we used to run these summer classes, that if you get a teacher and it's got 20 kids in that class, if you've got 50% of those kids that are absolutely brilliant and they learned quickly and they're doing really well, and then you've got another 10 that are always laughing and smoking at back at class and not bothered. Do you know what I mean? No, but you know, well, you could learn how to still. That teacher is always going to think, well, I'm going to really kind of put my efforts into, it's a natural thing, put your efforts into the ones that are going to do the best. At the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to make you famous, if you know what I mean. You know, if you've got a class full of kids and they all do really, really well, then you as a teacher look good. If you've got a class full of kids and they all do absolutely, they all fail the O levels, and you know, then what you been doing with them, you know? And I think it's exactly the same with dogs, that you get your best qualities out of the ones that you like, and yeah, it's not easy, but you know, through experience and having a few dogs through your hands, you kind of learn which ones you like and which ones you don't like so much. I like them all, but some I like more than others. So, you know, yeah.
I think it's in friendly relationships though, isn't it? Like, you can have 100 friends, but you'll have those 10 friends who you just love spending time with.
Yeah.
They become your best friends.
Yeah, the thing is, Joe, right, and I don't know if you've seen it yourself, but I see it quite regularly. You're driving around in your car and you see somebody walking a dog and he's got his earpods in, and you think, hang on a minute, you know, what sort of relationship does that? If I took you out on a date and I turned up and I had my earpods in all night, what would you think? You were thinking, this fella don't want to talk to me. And I kind of look and I think, what sort of a bond has he got with that dog? If he's walking along, he's not even, when I'm walking my dogs or I'm out, I'm just talking to him all the time. I'm saying, come on, you know, blah, 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 you know, good lad, good boy, good boy. Even when I'm sending him out on retrieves, 200-yard retrieves, I'm shouting, good lad, encouraging it to get back all the time. And as soon as it's picked that dummy up, good boy, fetching, telling it to come back and getting it in close, getting on your knees, getting on floor with it, and having a bit of a rough and tumble, and just having that brilliant kind of friendship, you know. And yeah, it's, you know, it's
quality, not quantity, isn't it? There's no point going for an hour's walk.
No.
If the dog's self-employed and has no interest in
exactly.
not engaging with it.
If you're training your dogs, you better taking them out for 2 20-minute stints in a day rather than doing it 4 hours on a weekend. If you've got a dog and you've got a job that's absolutely full time, you're going to meetings, you've got this, you're working from home, you blah blah blah, and you take your dog out training on a Saturday morning, then yeah, you're going to get something out of it. You know, you're going to get pleasure out of it. But that dog's never going to benefit by long one-off training sessions. They've got to be short, they've got to be sweet, and they've got to be successful. And but yeah, you're right. So in what you say there, yeah, you know, short stints is always better than long ones. But yeah.
Yeah, this sometimes comes up in some of our forums on the Ladies Working Dog Group, where, you know, we're sort of asked how residential training works. Is it cheating, for want of a better word? Will you have the same bond with the dog that you would have if you did it yourself? So do you want to sort of give us a bit of an insight into how residential training normally works, and importantly, what happens afterwards? Because it's not just take your dog and then it's trained and that's it then, is it?
No. Firstly, you when you get a dog in for training, you're not only building a relationship with your dog, you're also building a relationship with the owner of that dog. I've had dogs in for training that the guys or the girls that have taken the dogs back from me, they often ring me, they'll come back and we'll have a couple of hours just keeping on top of things. They might come back for a couple of weeks at a time just before the shooting season starts for a bit of refresher training, if you like. Is it cheating? No, it's not. It's not cheating. What is cheating is if you haven't got time to train your dog and you're expecting to get results. If you're getting a dog and you think that you're going to bring the absolute best out of that dog, if you haven't got time to train it and you're still expecting to get the best out of it, then you're cheating the dog. You're not cheating yourself. You know, you've got a dog and you want to get the best out of it, come hell or high water. So if you don't have, I don't want to say if you don't have the abilities. Everybody's got an ability to train a dog to a certain standard, but you might not have the ability just to do it as you want it to be done. You might not have the time to do it, which is generally the case. It's down to time. If I get a dog in for training, generally I take them at about 7, 8, 9 months old. I like to think when I'm getting a dog that the owner's done some form of training with it. I don't like getting a blank canvas, so to speak. When these pups that I've got now, they're just on the feet. By 5 weeks old, they will be retrieving a tennis ball without a shadow of a doubt, because every morning I'll get one of them out, throw a little ball for it, throw a rolled up sock for it, just get it coming back, get that built in to its DNA, if you like. Labrador retriever, in inverted commas, don't always mean that they're going to be brilliant retrievers. You get some natural retrievers, spaniels that hunt, you get some natural hunters, some you don't. But I like to think that the owner has done something with it, a little bit of recall, a little bit of walking on lead, a little bit of retrieving. If you do get a blank canvas and you're starting from scratch with an 8-month-old dog, we're talking about a dog that's probably picked up quite a few bad habits along the way. So it's going to take a little bit longer. You've got to work a little bit harder, and you've got to be a little bit more understanding towards that dog, in the respect that it's gone from one environment where it's just been allowed to do whatever it wants to somebody saying, right, this dog is now 8 months old, it's ready to be trained as a gun dog. There you go, Simon. Thanks very much. I'll see you in 6 months' time. And and that does happen. It isn't always the best way forward. When I get a dog at 7 months old, but first, or 8 months old, however old it is, I generally don't want them over 12 months old, because by that time they've kind of, I'm not saying they've gone past the best, but you're getting something that might be a little bit more difficult to deal with. But first 2 weeks, I do nothing apart from take it to pub for a pint, get it to be my best mate. If your dog's not your mate, forget it. You ain't got a chance. As again, going back to trust, couple of weeks, a week or 2 weeks, just getting it, to trust you, be a friend. And then basically then you've got a routine, that you kind of go through. All dogs are different. Some dogs are great walking on lead with Labradors, walking to wheel. Some dogs are. Some dogs are great at retrieving. Some dogs are. Some dogs are great at just kind of sitting and staying and having a bit of patience. Some dogs are. So it varies. Now, going back to what I was saying about dogs that you like and dogs that you don't like, some dogs you do get in for training that you don't particularly, I'm not saying you don't like, but you won't have it yourself. And it's a challenge to get results, with that dog. When somebody's kind of paying you to do it, you've got to get results. Either that, or you ring them up and you explain the situation and say, look, this dog, it's just not doing what I want it to do. I think you'd be better taking it back. And I have had that. Some dogs that are really, really difficult, some that are a little bit aggressive. But you generally find that out in the first couple of weeks, and I've had to send them back. But in the main, they come, probably spend anything from 3 to 6 months with me. When they kind of get to a stage where I've got something to show the client, I'll invite them back. We'll take them out. I'll say, right, this is what we've been doing. I can get it, it's stopping on whistle when it goes out. If you're looking for, you've planted a few dummies and you send your dog out and get it hunting, or it walks nicely on lead, it'll sit and stay. You can put it out on rights and lefts and all that sort of thing. And, they want to see that your dog's progressing. When eventually you've got the finished item, which, when I say finished item, a dog's never a finished item. You're forever training your dog. I hand that dog back, and I always stress that a shooting dog, it's not like a gun where you've been shooting all season with it. You just stick it in cupboard at the end of the season, and then when you get it out in August or September, it's just going to pick up from where. It's not like that. You've got to maintain that training. You take a dog out through somewhere, although you're not shooting with it, you'll sit and stay with it, throw a blind, throw a seam retrieve for it, throw a blind somewhere, send it back for this, stop it on whistle, just go through a basic kind of exercise with it. And I always kind of say you need to do that maybe 2 or 3 times a week just to keep on top of things. But then when they've gone, they might, I always say to them, look, if you've got any problems, give us a ring, come back, we'll have an hour. It might have to come back for a week just to kind of put a few little things right that have gone a little bit wrong. But yeah, I mean, mostly it's, I would never say it's cheating as such, like Sue said, that people might look at it like that. And it's certainly not a case of somebody thinking, well, I haven't done right by the dog by sending it away, or I'm not doing right by it. Well, of course you are. You're doing it because you want to get the best out of it. And, to get your best out, if you don't think you can get the best out of that dog and you take it out into the shooting field, see, the thing is, when you take a dog out into the shooting field, you get other guys there with dogs, and I've seen them, we've all seen them, that are just dogs that are wild. You've got a dog that behaves itself, that sits on a peg, off at lead, you can put your gun down, you can go to speak to the guy who's on next peg, your dog's still sat there, it never moves during drive, don't matter whether there's birds running around, birds dropping. In the end of drive, you send your dog to pick that one. At the end of the day, somebody comes up and says, oh, hell, I wish I had that dog in my kennel. At the end of the day, Joe, it don't matter who's trained it. It's still your dog, and you've maintained that training for that dog. If you haven't got the time, you don't think you've got the ability. The other thing, of course, is if you don't think you've got the ability, go for one-to-ones. Just go for one-to-one lessons and say, right, this is what I want you to do for the next 2 weeks. When you've done that, then we'll go to the next step. When you've done that, then we'll go to the next step. And that handler is also learning by training that dog themselves. But a lot of it's down to time. If you work full time, there's all sorts of reasons why you might send your dog away for training.
It always baffles me, because I come from a horsey background, very much. Did a lot of competing stuff when we were younger. Me and Dad both hunted, and my brother. And you never think anything of buying a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old horse that's done it all. Nobody says, oh, I'm cheating because I'm on this horse now that somebody else trained. And when I came into dogs, when my dad was trialing, he would buy a part-trained gun dog. It wasn't a bad thing. And I see all that side of it. So when we started the LWDG, and there was this sort of like, oh, you've got to have them from a pup, when the two of you are absolutely clueless, have no idea what's going on, and train them yourself. And again, why would you do it that way? Why would you not have one of you having a clue what this is meant to look like?
Well, I sold a spaniel only last week to a guy, one that I bred myself. Absolutely lovely dog, no problem with it at all. Just didn't do it for me, sadly. And it was, well, I say sadly, unfortunately, it was a bitch, or a pup that I bred out of my own field trial winning bitch, one that I'd won a novice with and had various awards in opens, and you always kind of hope that it's going to follow on. And this is what I'm saying about going back to a dog that you think's always going to do better than the last one. And you kind of think, well, it's not going to make the grading trials, but it's going to make a lovely shooting dog. Now, that guy who's taking that dog, I know for a fact he's only had it a fortnight, and it's just dropped in straight away. He's taking it out, he's hunting, he's been out rabbit shooting with it twice already. And because when you're training a dog, you kind of ingraining something in that dog's brain, if you know what I mean. You're not just you're not giving it a book to read. It's something that you're trying to. It's part of its. You're trying to get it to be part of its DNA, if you understand what I mean. So you do something on a regular basis, and you do it often enough, and it's repetition, getting your dog to do this, getting your dog to do that. And if you've got a dog, I've had spaniels where I've been in a beating line, and there's been some young kid on end that would love a dog, never had one, and I've said, here, take this dog beating, and it's gone with him. My dogs will go with anybody and do anything for anybody. My wife's not into dogs in a big way, but she can get them to sit in garden, get them to walk nice long lead. She'll take them out for a walk. They'll walk lovely. They'll sit. Whenever she stops, they'll sit. You know, and it's just part of their. It's just become part of their. It's habitual, and my dogs. I've always kind of thought that the well-adjusted, well-rounded, and they'll kind of go with anybody. You know. And as I say, this guy's taken this dog and it's just fitting straight away. So buying a part-trained dog or a fully trained dog, yeah, I mean, if it's done right, it shouldn't ever be an issue. Shouldn't ever be an issue.
I don't think if my dad hadn't given me Grace, his field trialing dog, the first time I ever went out, my first experience of gun dogs was
What breed was that, Joe? What breed?
She was a spaniel.
Oh, spaniel,
and
right,
she was called Bringaro Gracie. She'd done loads with Dad. He went, take her, and I went beating all day, and I must have looked like I knew exactly what I was doing, because the bitch did the job in front of me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I had my passion and my love for it came from watching her hunt. I was mesmerised.
Yeah.
Now, had she been a pup I'd had to train myself and I was fighting with, which now I've got younger dogs and I do, you know, there's massive gaps in my learning compared to their learning. And I look at it, I think if I'd had that experience, I wouldn't have loved it like I loved it from the fact that I watched a dog do it perfectly. And in my brain, we talk about like what's ingrained. What she gave me, I know what it's meant to look like. So I know when my dog's not doing it right. I know what it should look like. So it gave me something to attain. And I think for a lot of people, I would never say to somebody, you know, oh, you should get rid of your dog because of this. But when you're brand new with a brand new pup, brand new trainer, you've got to start somewhere by seeing what it's meant to look like.
Well, my last spaniel bitch that I had, my trialing bitch that I had, she went out of by a dog called Blue Pepper. That's quite a famous stud dog. A guy that ran it, Dave Lissett, owned by Duke of Buccleuch. And I know Dave, and I had this bitch, and I said to him, look, you know, I want to. Oh, sorry, no, I went after a pup that was sired by Blue Pepper. I'd used him before. Jet as his pet name was. I'd used him before, and I spoke to Dave. I said, look, Dave, I want a pup out of a quality bitch by Pepper. If anybody comes along. So he rang me a few months later, said, listen, I've had this lad come round with this, but I'm not going to mention any names. So I've had this lad come round with this bitch. Said he's used Jet. And I think it could be worth a pump, you know, it could be worth a pump. He said, the thing is, the dog knows more about job than he does. Now, by saying that, basically, the dog was so well bred with not a lot of training, but it were an unbelievable bitch. You know, she were really nice. And the guy that owned it, you know, we got to be quite friendly. And the dog did know more about the job than he did. And obviously, you know, I ended up with this pup that I ended up winning trials and you know, as I say, went through opens with her. And yeah, you're right, you know, it isn't always about you actually taking that dog out. If you've got the right raw material, let's put it that way. If you've got the right raw material, you know, if you don't put yeast in a loaf of bread, it's never going to rise, is it? So you've got to have all the right ingredients. You've got to have the right raw material. And generally, you'll get a right sort of animal out of it, you know.
I've got a dog. My dog Rex is by Blue Pepper and trained by Mental. And my bitch, her grandfather is Blue Pepper, trained by me. And I look at him and I think, that is what she can do. And
Yeah.
she knows she can do it, but
Yeah.
it's a gap in my learning. She knows the job.
Have you ever had a dog where you've looked at it and you've been shooting over it or whatever, like I do, and I think, I can't believe I've trained that dog. You know, and it's like it's just been better than you ever thought it would be. Now, I've not had a lot of them, you know, but I've had a few of them, and you know, you're right. It's a funny job, isn't it? You know,
It drives us all mad.
It does. It absolutely does.
That's what you should call this podcast. It's Funny Job.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. One thing about it, it's never straightforward. It's never straightforward.
Never boring.
But well, certainly never boring. No, it's
Do you have any advice for aspiring gun dog trainers or owners who
Yeah.
want to get into like shooting and trialing?
right. Advice. Right. Well, I mean, we've all got to start somewhere. If before you get into trialing, you've got to get into shooting. Now, you can't. Well, you can't, in actual fact, trial a dog if you don't shoot yourself. I know people that do, but you can't ever have a real quality trialing dog if you don't shoot, or you don't get somebody to shoot something for it. It's got to be. It ain't like you turn up at a test and you've got somebody throwing dummies about. So, firstly, you've got to get involved in the shooting side of it. Ideally, start off beating. Doing a little bit of picking up if you can. Even better, befriending a keeper that'll let you do a little bit of dogging in on pheasants and stuff, pushing pheasants back into pens. Any kind of involvement in game that you can get your dog, you know, into, the better. So, you know, rabbits, pheasants in a pheasant pen or a rabbit pen. It's not easy to get into. It's just kind of getting to know the right sort of people. Also, as well, if you join in clubs, a lot of these clubs have training days where they do like walked up shoots or summer tests. Just kind of get to know right people. I think joining clubs is probably the best way forward. There's some clubs that don't do a lot of stuff out of season. There are some very good clubs that do a lot of stuff out of season through summer, even meeting up for barbecues and stuff. I know it sounds daft, but it just gives you that opportunity to meet other like-minded people and kind of just gets you into it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, get involved in the shooting side of it, get involved in the beating side of it, and you just kind of get it build it up from there. You'll never have a successful dog in trials if it's not regularly coming into contact with live game. It's one of them things, you know, that's where the kind of quality dogs shine through in trials. Ones that have had a lot of, you can always tell good spaniels when they've had a lot of rabbit shot for them. The ones that kind of haven't had a lot of rabbit shot for them are the ones that just kind of don't shine, if you like. You can always tell when they've had a lot of game in the mouth. But yeah, you know, just get into the shooting side of it more than anything. And join some clubs. You can get a list of field trialing clubs from Kennel Club. I think you can download them off their website. So every club in the country's on there.
How can our listeners contact you if they're interested?
Either through Sue or through you, Joe. I'm on Facebook, Simon Grace. If they want to just drop me a line, and I'm always up for a chat. I'm always up for a chat with anybody who wants to ring me, just for not even a bit of advice, just to talk about dogs. You know, I'm happy.
You'll be inundated now with women calling you to ask you your question.
Yeah.
I don't know what my wife will say about that, but anyway. No.
Thank you so much.
I'm always up for a natter.
Thank you so much for doing this podcast. Your advice is invaluable, and I'm sure the listeners will love it. Please let us know what you think about it. If you're loving the podcast, please subscribe and give us a review. And thank you, Sue, for co-hosting this with me. Massively appreciated. And we shall speak to you all very soon. Thank you for listening to LWDG Pod Dog with Joanne Parrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. If you're interested in joining our supportive community and taking advantage of our group experts training and resources, please visit our website at www.thelwdg.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review, and we look forward to helping you and your four-legged friend thrive. Until next time, keep training, keep learning, and keep working with your beloved gun dog.